Dave Talks Comics, Episode 31. Dave Talks Comics is a podcast on the subjects of comic books and cartoons. I talk about comics I have read and cartoons I have watched. Dave Talks Comics can be found on the web at davetalkscomics.com. On Twitter, at Dave Talks Comics. Email can be sent to dave@davetalkscomics.com. On this episode of Dave Talks Comics, I will be continuing my coverage of Heroes Con with the Tomorrow's 20th Anniversary panel. This panel was hosted by John Morrow, the publisher of Tomorrow's, and features Roy Thomas, Michael Urie, John Cook, and Eric Nolan Wethington.
Nonsense that we do on a monthly basis out of Raleigh, North Carolina. We have been publishing various and assorted comics-related things and now Lego-related things since 1994. My wife and I started it just kind of on a lark. We were doing our graphic design business and our ad agency business, and I was a big Kirby fan, Jack Kirby fan, and decided one day after he died, I've still got my old Kirby comics. I've been out of comics a while. I'm going to just put together a little newsletter, right? We've got computers, we've got graphic design software, a little 16-page Xerox thing just for fun. And so we sent it out to 125 people that had written in letters to Comics Buyer's Guide about Jack Kirby after he passed away. And just to see what the response was. And the idea was, well, it lasts 4 issues, 6 issues, great. If it doesn't last more than 1 issue, great. It was fun to do. So fast forward, here we are 20 years later. Jack Kirby Collector number 63 just came out this week. If you do the math, that's not exactly bi-monthly frequency, but, I'm busy cracking the whip on these guys, so hey, I have an excuse there. But we just it just started with Jack Kirby, and from there it blossomed. A gentleman who I'm about to introduce to you, let me go down the road first. You guys probably know who everybody is, but we'll start here on my left. This gentleman probably needs some introduction if you're a fan of comics at all. He started reading comics in the 40s, working professionally in comics in the 60s as Stan Lee's right-hand man at Marvel Comics, was one of their top writers there, also became editor-in-chief of Marvel, top writer of DC. The list goes on, but his love of comics kind of goes back to what he's doing for Tomorrow's, which is his magazine alter ego. This is Mr. Roy Thomas. To Roy's left is a gentleman who I had the pleasure of meeting because of Captain Action. Tom Stewart, I think, suggested, right?
You're right.
A mutual friend of ours, Tom Stewart, said, hey, there's this guy, Michael Urie, and he wants to do this Captain Action book. And I'm like, Captain Action? I remember those ads in the comics, but I never had Captain Action. And Michael very quickly showed me through his enthusiasm for that property that this was a book that we really needed to publish. From there, we did the Batcave Companion, which is the history of the Silver Age Batman. Then we had the Justice League Companion. Book on Dick Giordano.
Comics Gone 8.
Comics Gone 8. Oh, how could I forget Comics Gone 8? And a little magazine we do called Back Issue, which is going into its 11th year of publication. This is Michael Urie. We started Back Issue on my 40th birthday, and I'm now more than 40. So the next gentleman next to Michael is a guy I've had the honor and privilege of being associated with since the end of the first year we decided on the Kirby Collector, around issue 7.
In 95.
This guy emailed me and said, hey, I'm a big Kirby fan. I want to be your assistant editor. And I wrote her back and said, hey, okay.
What's your name?
And that's kind of how it works. From there, he worked with me on the Jack Kirby Collector through issue 30, I believe, pretty steadily, but also decided one day we need to do a Jack Kirby Collector for all those other artists. From that came the magazine Comic Artist, which went on to win about a zillion Eisner Awards. A zillion, same thing. John's back with us now doing Comic Book Creator Magazine, which is the successor of Comic Book Artist. This is Mr. John B. Cook. And last but not least is, I guess you would call him my right-hand man. Eric has been with us since
2000.
2000? Oh, okay. 2000 it is. Eric's been with us since 2000.
Easy to remember with a nice round number.
Okay. Eric, for tomorrow's does, you named it, Eric does it. Eric handles convention booths for us. He helps do mail orders for us, log orders, proofreads, scans art, cleans up art, writes, edits. Yeah, I mean, you name it, he does it. But the best thing he does for tomorrow's is his series of books, Modern Master Series, which is each volume is devoted to a different one of the top artists working today. This is Mr. Eric Nolan Winning. I am going to get started. Let's see. Roy, I started with you in our earlier curve trend, so I'm going to start with Michael. Michael?
Yes.
One of the distinctions of the Tomorrow's Magazine line is, with the exception of me, pretty much all our editors have worked professionally in comics before they started editing magazines for Tomorrow's. Give everybody an idea of how you get started professionally in comics, and what did you do prior to Tomorrow's? I know the answer to this, but a lot of people may not.
I was in the 80s, near the late 80s. I was determined to get into comics, and I started to write for Amazing Heroes for Fantagraphics. And that enabled me to make contacts with a number of different writers and editors of the day. And then I was hired by Diana Schutz at Comico, the comic company, which was headquartered in a creaking house in Norristown, Pennsylvania. The first floor was the office of Dennis Lasorda, who was one of the publishers. He also was a chiropractor, so he had his office there. And I was on the third floor, which it used to be Greg Brady's bedroom because it had some psychedelic wallpaper there. But that was a wild place to learn comics, and I worked with Bob Schreck and Diana there. Then in 1989, went to work at DC Comics. Edited there for a few years, ended up in 93 at Dark Horse in Portland, Oregon, and was there for a while, and then kind of went away. And through Captain Action, was able to, and then the other publications I've done with John in the 11 years now since that, I've had this wonderful opportunity to sort of be in the periphery, but be in a realm of comics that I really enjoy. The perpetual reliving of comics of my youth, and in getting to interview and meet people and become friends with in some cases, and say goodbye to folks like Nick Carty, who you idolize as a kid or a teenager, and then you get opportunities to work with them, and that's a wonderful and enriching experience.
Okay, so a lot of what you covered back issue is Bronze Age material. What is it about Bronze Age comics that keep you inspired enough to produce? I mean, what's your issue number?
Right now, 74. 73 just came out. This issue has yet to be published. We got a couple of advance comics. This is real. It does exist. It's in my hand. But this is next month's issue, number 74. And well, for one, the 70s in particular were extremely bountiful. There were DC and Marvel in particular were combating each other for shelf space, so they were producing tons and tons of comics. And so, first of all, just by sheer volume, there's a lot of stuff there that you can cover. Also, I think that it was an era where comics really started to mature. With Roy writing Conan. O'Neill and Adams on Green Lantern right there in 1970. Kirby jumping ship from Marvel to DC and doing the Fourth World and such. A lot of stuff was happening. And then I'd also argue that the 80s, which is the other decade we pretty much mine, was also a decade of experiments and innovations and formats and maturation and a lot of interesting stuff. So there's like no shortage of material for us to continue to do.
Well, there is, and you're talking about all the great stuff that happened in the 70s and the 80s, and that's true. But I think of 70s comics, and a lot of what I think of stuff is like those secret society of supervillains, or those strange. I was a DC guy in the 70s, so like that strange run of Teen Titans there after the original like Nick Hardy era, with Mal as the Guardian and the Joker's daughter, Bumblebee, and Karate Kid and stuff like that. I mean, those are hardly like high marks aesthetically in comic history, and yet you cover those, and those are some of my favorite articles.
Well,
and what's the explanation? Because I don't really understand it myself.
I think it's nostalgia. I think that the majority of the readers are of a certain age where they do remember those comics. And it's sort of like, I liken back issue to VH1 Behind the Music. Although there's nowhere near as much drug use and that kind of stuff that you find there in the rock world. But nonetheless, it's nostalgia. And again, there were just so many new things happening during that time. So for every secret society of supervillains, which is interestingly is mundane as that comic was back during the day, those characters keep returning, don't they? The concept keeps getting recycled time and time again.
Yeah.
And now, there's Forever Evil at DC, so there's no shortage of villains starring in comics. And back then, it was relatively novel to do that.
Well, Roy, as a kid, and not to date you, but as a kid, and I think I speak for a couple guys up here.
I'm 39.
There we go. We were reading The Invaders and loving every issue of it, even though it had Frank Robbins' art, who, not to speak ill of Frank Robbins, now I'm a harder case for him, but back then, I really, really did not like Frank Robbins.
You were not alone.
But I love the Invaders series, and I would have to say that's probably one of the first series where I was able to disconnect from my dislike of the art and still enjoy the series. Prior to that, if I didn't like both the art and the writing, I wouldn't buy it.
Well, that was Vinny Coletta's inking that did that.
Yeah. Now you said that as well, right?
Yeah, that's why I put Vinny on it.
Yeah.
Disguise Frank Robbins by making him look more like a Marvel artist.
But
it worked. As soon as he dropped off, Frank Spring started making it, the sales went down. What can I say?
Well, but the thing is, even though I don't like Robbins' art, your writing and the way you handle those characters, spoke to me as a reader when I was like 16 years old. You could see whoever's writing this book really loves these characters. And what is it about, we want to know what makes you tick. What is it about you that makes you go back to that golden age well time and time again, find great inspiration there, come up with great stories? Is it the characters? Were they really that great characters? Or is it the characters had this much in them and you expanded them? Why is the golden age so critical to you?
I have not the slightest idea. No, I was interested in those characters because when I started reading comics, looking at them first, but reading them back in the middle 40s, 45 or so, when I was like 4 and a half, so I traced it back to about there, before I could read them. At that stage, World War II was just kind of over, just barely over or thereabouts, but some of my relatives had a couple of old comics lying around. For years, I had a copy of Superman number 19, the one that has that story where Superman goes to a Superman cartoon. Clark takes Lois to a Superman cartoon, and the one with the funny-faced villains. And it had these wonderful ads for these other books. It had an all-star ad with characters, one or two characters I'd never seen before. It had, Simon and Kirby, Sandman kind of covers and things like that. Starman, all these characters I hadn't seen. I was always fascinated. And I remember there was a Captain Marvel Jr.'s issue I had too, and that was an old comic. I was just fascinated to run into this stuff, and I guess I always had the latent interest in history. Americans hate history and all that they say, but I always liked it. I hated teaching it, but I loved history. So those two things, comics and history, just came together. And comics had a history, and I knew about it, and I kept thinking about the fact that the superheroes had all kind of been born out of that milieu, Superman right before, but most of the characters coming in around the time World War II and right before and so forth, and it just kind of grabbed me and never let go. But then, of course, there was the practical fact that I had just stepped down from the editor-in-chief. But even if Stan and I were not exactly in maximum love with each other at that particular moment because of the cloud under which I left, he wanted to keep me around. He was willing to make me a writer and editor because I said I liked Len Wein and Mark Wolford, but I wouldn't work for him. And I said, I either work for you directly or not. And also, you may write editors. He was eager to keep me happy. Well, there's nothing I wouldn't do except take advantage of a situation like that. So I figured this is the time to tell him that I want to write a World War II superhero comic, because I know if I had said that 6 months before, he would have thrown me out of his office. Because he had no great nostalgia for it. He wrote those few stories with Jack Kirby, but he didn't. That was just because he didn't know what else to do with Captain America, not because he wanted to do them. So I figured, so I got to do it because I wanted to get out of writing the Marvel mainstream stuff. I didn't want to have to know what Spider-Man was doing and Avengers was doing. Conan was great. He's thousands of years removed from anything. And so I figured Avengers will get me a few decades removed, and I don't have to be involved in that world anymore. So it was a combination of all those various factors that made me suddenly decide to do Invaders. And once I began to do it, it became an obsession. Of course, then it led to my all-time favorite writing assignment, over even Avengers and Conan, which was All-Star Spider.
Well, and that's what I'm getting to, because, okay, Alter Ego magazine, if you guys don't read Alter Ego, you should. Yeah, and you certainly cover a lot of Silver Age stuff, but there's never been a publication that covers the Golden Age with the depth and just the level of enthusiasm that you do. And I guess...
John could do it, but he's got so many other things to do.
I don't think so. He's got his area, and we're going to get into that just speaks to him. But you've got the Golden Age stuff. How do you keep coming back to it and never get tired of it?
Well, the lucky thing that happened to me is that as I was going on in those early issues, and I had my own enthusiasm, and granted, much as I was into the Silver Age, well, I was into the Silver Age, so it's not nostalgia exactly. It's just there, and I'm interested in that. But the Golden Age was something magical to me, so it was always hard for me I know I got to cover the Silver Age too, and I like it, but it's the Golden Age that really turns me on more than that. Even though I feel I have a lot to offer in the Silver Age, because I knew those people on a day-to-day basis and saw that world and so forth. So I just decided that I would do the best. And one of the best things that happened to me, though he's been gone for the last year or two, was Jim Amish coming on to do these wonderful interviews, because I wasn't really an interviewer. I mean, I didn't have time, I didn't have the information and so forth. It was just a hassle for me. I could barely manage to get the tape recorder to work over the phone, When I did that interview with John Romita, you remember about issue 9, which we then used? Well, no, I don't even think John knows this, but there were 3 tapes that I made with John talking on the phone. It became that interview with John Romita Jr. Well, the first 2 worked just fine. The third didn't record at all, but I had my questions, so I just wrote it out. The next day, I wrote it out what thought I remembered to send it to him. He said, "Yeah, that sounds right." So, so the last third of that is totally me, but at the same time, it's about 70 or 80% John and so forth. So, but at the same time, I felt like Jim was just a natural interviewer, and it took a lot of that load off me and enabled me to get all these people that I didn't have to chase after. So, it's a combination of people coming in. I wanted to get some help because I didn't know they had. Also, P.C. Hamlick has this great interest in the Fawcett stuff, so put him to work. And I did want to cover the fan stuff to that element, so Bill Shelley was good for that. I felt Alter Ego came out of the fanzine, so we should spend a few pages each issue on the fans. And so I just grab up like some sort of like dust bunny. I grab up whatever comes in and utilize it. And, no great plan or anything. Just try to keep your head above water and have a little fun.
Just curious, just in total anecdotal evidence, based on the feedback you get on Alter Ego, what percentage of your readers only care about the Golden Age covers and really don't care about the Silver Age? And then how many are the reverse?
I don't hear that many people mention one way or the other. I mean, there are people that say they're not interested in that. Some people write to me they're only interested in the Fawcett stuff. There's a couple of those, but I've never really looked at it, and I don't get that much. I very rarely have somebody say, I like the Golden Age stuff, but I hate the Silver Age, or vice versa. But I think everybody has their own interests, and I think as long as I balance it, as well as I can. Jerry Bales, when he was doing fanzine, he always referred to that term of balance, and I guess I kind of like that. But then, of course, sometimes it's just good to do a theme issue and just throw caution to the winds and do one or the other. So I think I'm disorganized enough that I don't really have any kind of plan. Now, John is organized, and I'm sure Michael's organized, but I've never been organized. I'm just the kind of guy who reaches into a grab bag whenever I'm desperate, grabs out whatever I can, and throws it together.
Sure you are.
No, that's been the secret of my whole career.
You're just a shambles. You're no organization at all.
I had a great plan to write Conan, right? I had a great plan to do Invaders. I never had a great plan to do anything except keep them going and not have to go back to teaching high school. That's all I wanted.
Well, and I think I speak for probably everybody up here. We've all had that horrible moment where you completed an interview, recorded it, you thought, and then you go to play the tape back and you get a big hiss.
Yeah.
And it's like,
at least I had 2/3, thank God.
Yeah.
But you guys all have those too, I'm sure.
Yeah. That's the worst. Well, I'm going to move to John. A big part of what Tomorrow's does is we each have our own thing that inspires us, and that's what we produce. And hopefully, I'm certain of it, it comes out in the publications because the feedback you guys give us and the sales you give us prove that, like Roy with the gold and silver age covers, mine with the Kirby coverage, that's what we love most, and you guys keep supporting it. John, your influence, obviously Kirby was already taken by me. I wasn't going to get that out. So you were out of luck with that, and I know Kirby was a huge influence on you. But what inspired you enough to go, okay, I'm going to do comic book artist, and I'm going to make this. I mean, I saw personally how hard you worked on every issue. What was your influence? What was your inspiration that kept you going and burning those? Because you had a full-time day job when you started CBA. What is it? What got you going?
I think it was the working together, because I'd worked with John again. It was literally my first day on the internet where I Googled, they even have a Google then, but I typed into a browser Jack Kirby. And a magazine about Jack Kirby came out, and I consider myself one of the #1 Jack Kirby fans, and I was absolutely offended that I did not know about this magazine that was already in its 6th issue. And we immediately connected, and I immediately made a plan to do at least 2 articles for every issue. And we was working together. We worked together on a daily basis, virtually.
Well, we did, but and I know, and that was great, and it was a great time. But something got you. What was this burning need you had to create this publication? And I know the answer. If you can't say it, I'll say what it is.
Well, it was to do a magazine for a Jack Kirby collector for the other guys.
Yeah, but why? Did you want to make money? Did you want to be famous? Or did you
No,
want
I don't think
something
that a good oral
calling?
history had been done up to that time. I think a lot of the focus had been on different. Well, there hasn't been a lot of focus in American comic book history. Enough that I thought, just talking to the Stu Schwartzbergs, the people who work behind the lines, so to speak, and that needed to be covered in the fight, as much as anybody, just needed to be talked to. I devoted an issue to Flo Sniper. She doesn't even do comics.
Yeah.
Big Apple comics.
But I mean, it was, what I'm trying to get out of you is that you had this need to let these people have their say, get it on the record, give them their due. And it wasn't just a cold, calculated thing to get well known. I mean, you really genuinely had a desire to get these people on the record.
Well, that's why I ended up doing all 3 because I see this ad for comic book artists. And it says, we're starting after that first issue with Neil Adams, we're going to get to all the other neglected people. And I'm about 2nd or 3rd on that list. And I said, well, I probably feel more neglected now than I did in 2000 or 1998 or whatever it was. But I said, I didn't feel all that neglected. And certainly, nobody was throwing any benefits for me or anything like that. So I figured, if he's going to do it, I should get in on it or something like that.
Yeah,
This guy was a tremendous influence on me because he's the one that got me into the idea of wanting to do interviews and things as opposed to doing that.
Even though
Gil Kane, Gil Kane.
Exactly. You had that was the template for all of us to follow. Was the John Benson interview in the earlier incarnation of Alter Ego that was in depth and then talked about real things in real life and not just about the characters and stuff like that, but how these people live their lives. I think a real important thing is that you brought up the John Romita, that the 3rd tape was not, so you ad-libbed it or whatever.
Yeah.
You gave it to John for approval, and that's a really important thing for what
I don't do that anymore.
Because I don't do journalism per se of just whatever comes out of somebody's mouth. I make sure that they want to approve it, that they want it out there.
Now I try hard to keep it away from it. I don't understand the job. Other than that, no, we haven't got time to give it to you. They always want to change it. They always want to do rewrite it.
Well, so, John, you are back tomorrow's now. Comic book creator, that's issue 5, I think, you have in your hand.
That's correct. I'm working on 6 right now. It'll be awesome.
Hold up, Fox. I'd like to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Just debut for the show. That'll be in stores in a few weeks.
That ain't a superhero.
That's my point exactly. That ain't a superhero. Why are you coming back now? Why are you doing this mag now? And why are you doing...
It was working with Tomorrows. It was really the great camaraderie and the creative partnership that we've had, and it's been very enjoyable. And I think it's important stuff that we do, and I think I fit into this. I deserve a seat up here amongst you guys because we do good work.
But why is Dennis Kitchen on that one?
Why is Dennis Kitchen on there?
Yeah, why didn't you put a
It's
superhero on
important.
there?
Why
Why didn't you put a superhero on there?
Because have you seen the name of the magazine? It's about comic creators.
There we
It's
go.
about
That's my point.
personality.
That's what I'm getting to.
It's not about the artifact, it's about the artist. So, and I wanted to, again, just continue the tradition of oral histories that allowing people to have their say. Even the underground comics publishers, who's an artist too.
Oh, and for anybody who's not familiar with Dennis's history, I mean, I was somewhat familiar, but actually reading him talk about it, and reading him further talk about the collapse of the kitchen sink and all the travails he went through with that. I mean, it's a fascinating story, and so steeped in what was going on in comics in the 80s and 90s. I mean, you're documenting stuff that I've not seen put on paper.
And the founder of the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund as well.
I'll have to read that.
Yeah, it's
You went for free on that.
Eric, you've been doing Modern Masters now since 2000. No, well, you started in 2003. Okay. 29 and counting volumes.
Yep.
Best and worst moments.
Best moments? Worst moments? Worst moment, going back to what you said about losing the editor. Having to call George Perez and said, can we redo that hour-and-a-half interview we just did? Knowing the schedule? Yeah, that was a low point. Best, I guess, just making friends with the artists. Alan Davis and I became pretty good friends after the first book, and I met his kids, and he's met my kids, and stuff like that. Where you go to conventions and you make the rounds and see people, and that's the fun part for me is just like getting to know the people.
Yeah. So, who were the ones that got away? At least for now. For Modern Masters.
Well, the third person I asked to be a part of the book series was here at this show. Mike Mignola was a guest, along with Art Adams. And I asked Art that weekend, and I asked Mike. And Mike keeps putting me off. And every year it's, oh, no, I'm too busy on this movie, and oh, I'm too busy with this right now. Maybe next year, call me back. And so I give him a call every year, and every year he says, well, I don't know, maybe next year. So Mike Mignola's the big one.
Well, and I asked that because Eric also does the layout on Draw Magazine. The editor, Mike Manley, couldn't be here for this convention, but Eric can speak a little bit on the trials and tribulations of producing a how-to magazine that involves interviewing, talking to some very, very busy and in-demand artists.
Yeah, especially when the editor is also a very busy, very in-demand artist. So you've got to have to work against two of them at the same time sometimes to get the art that you need at the time, and or get the interviews done at the right time. But,
would you say Draw is a more labor-intensive job for you than actually producing your own books?
No, not really. I'm pretty about the same, really. Pretty about the same. I'm not having to do as much research, obviously, because I'm not doing at the point done one interview for the magazine. I'm mostly doing the design and putting things together. But so I don't have that research time. And that's a big part of it. That's the majority of my time when I'm doing the Modern Masters is I spend more time doing research than actually conducting interviews and putting it together, designing it. So without that.
Don't sell yourself short. You do de facto editing to some extent.
Well, yeah.
Proofreading.
Mike's gotten a lot better. Over the years. So I don't have to do as much editing.
Yeah, but still, it's there's that level.
Well, yeah, I've been plus when there's two big long interviews that take up half the magazine. You don't have to do a whole lot of editing with interviews as much as you do with an article. Right. So that makes it a little easier. But yeah, so there is some editing time. There's a lot of design time. I like to have the art match the text on the page. And sometimes you can't do that because especially with draw, because we're doing this process where you want to see the preliminary, you want to see the thumbnail, you want to see the pencil, you want to see the ink, and you want to see the finished product all together. So sometimes you can't quite match up the text as closely to the art as closely to the text as I would like in a lot of cases. But that's the tricky part for me. I'm trying to make things make sense. So when the reader discovers something in the text, they can look up at the art and say, "Oh yeah, that's it exactly." Yeah. That's the part that takes a little bit of tweaking and time.
Well, I know Roy is he's particularly a stickler for that, and I know
Boy, is he.
Doesn't work out.
it
We
works
try.
pretty well. I've
Sometimes
got
I get within 3 pages. It depends on how much art there is.
Exactly.
Because it's hard, and I don't want to push Chris too much, but my wife already says he's a saint, to work with.
Chris
I
Day
said,
is
"Nah,
layout
you've
artist.
you've done
I got a
it."
halo too sometimes.
I'm not easy. I think my wife's all-time favorite thing isn't really about a Tomorrow's book, but it's about before Alter Ego by a couple of years when I worked on the first collection of the old Alter Ego, the Alter Ego legendary fans. They collected stuff in the first 11 issues, and Bill Shelley sort of put the whole thing together, and so forth. And then he sent it to me, and I proofread it. And a lot of it was little things like, does the comma come inside or outside the quotes, and he had them all wrong. So he said, he got the proofs back, and he said he collapsed on the couch when he got it. So I feel that's my major accomplishment. I had my co-writer collapse on the couch when I did the proofreading. But if you really believe, and we all do, I think, in different ways, in perfection, we're never going to achieve it. We're never going to be close to it. But if you see something that needs to be changed, you just can't let it go and say, "Well, we'll just ignore it." It's just beyond my capability.
Well, there's so many challenges in producing regular magazines like we do. And originally, most of Tomorrow's publications were one-man operations. Like Kirby Licker's still me, right? Comic creator is still John, for the most part. I mean, we kind of started parsing out columns and things like that. Modern Masters, Eric does that, occasionally with a co-writer. But
I'm the one who made it modular. I just got 4 or 5 people to do it because I didn't think I'd have enough stuff to fill.
And you and Michael are the two of our editors who have never, ever missed a deadline. 103 issues for you, 76 for you, never missed a deadline. And I mean, that's unheard of in even big corporations.
There's always tomorrow.
Yeah, well, hopefully not. But I mean, we produce these things and we hear back from you guys, but it is a whole lot of work. And I just want to give a quick shout out. Chris Day does the layout on Alter Ego. John Cook was did it for about a year when Chris decided he just couldn't do it anymore.
About 15 issues also.
Yeah. Oh, was it 2 years?
Well, good.
He did it twice. He did it twice at the beginning and then later.
Oh, right.
Yeah. He's welcome back anytime.
Yeah. But it's a hard job, and the pay is not great, unfortunately. I'm sad to say.
What was really bad was before the internet stuff, when I was working with you by fax and phone call. And John on the other end of the line would be giving you all the corrections for what was maybe 20 or 30 pages at most of Alter Ego. I can tell it was a strain, but what can we do, No wonder I got my own magazine after a couple of months.
we would occasionally get into a battle of wills a little bit, and I do recall very, very distinctly one time got me exasperated going, Roy, is this all about you winning? Is this all about me winning? What is this all about? And Roy just says in this typical pragmatic fashion, well, I thought it was about the reader. And it's just like, you're so right. And he taught me a real lesson right there.
Well,
that's the editor's job. It's about the reader.
Yeah, well, Rich Fowles also does the layout on the back issue. And again, it's a very labor-intensive job. And you're a very, this is a very demanding editor. You want it to look right and be as close to perfect as possible.
Yeah, but you talk about mistakes. I mean, nobody wants to have one in print. The very first issue of back issue, I picked up the article on DC versus Marvel's Tarzan, and written by Tom Stewart, whom you mentioned earlier, and the word Koran, son of Tarzan, just is like a neon, and it's glowing there on the page. It's the first thing I see when I open up the magazine.
Yeah.
So,
Once it's made there, that's the only thing you'll ever see.
That's it.
Nothing beats me calling Len Wein's Swamp Thing as the nadir of his his career. He goes, really? Comes up to me, really? I thought it was a high flight.
Oh, I did a nice boneheaded typo last Kirby letter. You actually wrote me a letter about it. I was answering a person's letter about Lee Kirby and some contentious thing or something, and I forget how I worded it. It was something along the lines of, I was trying to say we don't intentionally try to slant things in a negative Stanley light. And I was typing fast. It was at the end of the production process. I had to get it to the printer, and the N''T didn't show up. So it says, I do try to slant things against a very negative light. And it went into print that way. It's like of all the stupid typos I had to do, that was first.
Some would call it a Freudian slip.
No, that's one of the biggest errors in journalism. That is like the most.
Leaving the not out.
The do not.
Yeah.
Eric, what's the biggest boneheaded mistake you've made?
Take your pick. I mean, first when I got my first book, the Alan Davis, my master's book, 128-page book. I opened up to a random page. There's a typo. I mean, and but as someone who has for the first 5 years I was there in the company from 2000 to 2005 or so, I proofread everything. In my defense, because all these mistakes are probably ones that I proofread or did not proofread very well. In my defense, a lot of times I'd get that manuscript. I need it back tomorrow.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Well, we all have day jobs, and it's like, you know,
we do the best we can.
Yeah. Well, so guys, tell me what you have coming up, and then I'll tell these fine people what we have coming up that don't involve you guys. Roy, you want to go first? We got over the next few issues.
Okay, just real fast. Of course, usually you kind of see it. We have the covers. It's nice. They always show the covers 3 or 4 issues ahead of time to give you a chance to save your pennies or something. But we've got a couple of things coming up with exchange of letters between Busy Arnold, the publisher of Quality, and Will Eisner and Jerry Ivory. Ken Watson wrote some really wonderful pieces. You can always check out his, the Comic Detective blog online, which is really good. One of the things I'm happiest about, but it came out of a selfish project, I suppose, is the Edgar Rice Burroughs issue coming up in October, which now that I'm doing 3 online strips for Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, it gave me the excuse to do what I always sort of wanted to do, which was to do an issue devoted to Edgar Rice Burroughs and the comic. Unfortunately, I could only devote about 65 pages to it, and I'm already seeing that ain't going to be enough, you know. But that's the way it goes. I'll have to figure out something. And then after that, I've got interviews with a lot of my favorite people coming up. Jim Shooter, who else? Jerry Conway, my old writing partner. Just trying to grab up different people. And there'll be another Roy Thomas interview because about every 40 or 50 issues I come up with. So everything else I try to stick through. At least 1974, 75 is kind of the cutoff point. With me, I figure, well, I'll just whenever I feel like it, I'll just give an interview to get some stuff off my chest or something. And so I think it'll be some kind of anniversary issue coming up. I know what it is. It'll be 50 years in comics, assuming I'm still counting in comics. So it's 1965 to 2015 will be 50 years, and Denny and Neil also, of course, at that time. Steve Skates, but I'm the one with the magazine. But I don't know, just cover with me with everything, whatever I come up with. My wife, when you talk about the biggest mistakes, my wife says the biggest mistake I do is doing the magazine, because she has so much work around the house she would like me to do. And I said, why don't you make it like a little less often? She says, like how much? Well, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. I said, no, that won't work.
What a coincidence. Mine too.
I think that's not an unusual feeling.
And the honeydew list grows.
And it ain't done. It's the do not list.
Michael, does your wife wish you did back issue lists frequently?
I wish my wife would not talk to me as much. My wife now works from home. I love my wife, and I would say this if she were sitting here on the front row, she would pretend to shoot me the look. But I'm writing a book right now too, and she's, again, like I said, working from home, and she has no inner monologue or dialogue. She just, everything is always shared with me, and I mean, I'm blessed to have a relationship like that. But when you're really trying to construct that sentence, and you're hearing about the squirrel and the cat staring at each other, those are the little distractions that I joke about it. I work from home. That's pretty cool. And I love that. And what was your question? I've taken the rest of it.
What do you have coming up?
What have I got coming up? Well, you talk about organization, and I've got my little notes here just so I don't miss anything. I'm not going to read everything, but the current issue, which just came out this week, is 73, back issue 73 with an Alan Davis Mark Farmer Batman, Batgirl, Robin cover, and it's a Batman Partners issue. So it's our way of celebrating the 75th anniversary of Batman by looking at the people he hangs out with. And interesting articles from Brave and the Bolds. We didn't see team-ups, fantasy team-ups that I wish would have happened, but could have happened, and kind of a little conjecture about what would have happened if they had happened, to look at Carrie Kelly from Dark Knight, the girl Robin. The issue here that I showed you earlier is the one that comes out next month, and it is issue 74, Fantastic Four in the Bronze Age, which has a variety of looks at FF comics of the 70s, 80s, a look at the radio show from the FF, cartoons, all kinds of fun stuff there. And the cover here is by Keith Pollard and Joe Rubenstein. 75 comes out in August. And that one I'm really happy about. It almost feels like a comic book creator issue. It's 80s independence. And the cover is Paul Chadwick's Concrete. And there's also an interview and an article about Dennis Kitchen's Death Rattle there. But it's a long interview about, article about Concrete, one about Cerebus, and a very lengthy interview with Richard and Wendy Peeney about ElfQuest. And let's see, issue 76 in September is Let's Get Small. Raise your hand if you get the joke. Let's Get Small. It's a Steve Martin album of the late 70s, but this is an issue about short, tiny little characters. So the Micronauts are on the cover. Pat Broderick did that cover. A lengthy article about the Micronauts comics history, primarily at Marvel. And the Atom, the Sword of the Atom, Ant-Man, the Super Juniors. Anybody remember the Super Juniors? The baby superheroes at DC foisted upon us in merchandising and occasionally in comics. A nice article about that. And then the last issue of this year is 77. It comes out in November. It's themed When Comics Were Fun. There's a Fred Hembeck cover recreating his spectacular Spider-Man cover. A Hembeck art gallery inside. Articles on Plastic Man in the Bronze Age, Blue Devil. I interviewed Jim Valentino about Normal Man. A lot of fun stuff in that issue. And just a couple of things for next year. I've already pretty much got 2015 planned. Issue 80 is a Flash and Green Lantern issue. Are you doing one in Ultra Ego?
Yeah. I'm doing the one on back, I guess, is it through about 70 or something?
Yeah, and then I'm picking up from there.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of a tag team. So Alter Ego will be doing Flash and Green Lantern of the Golden and Silver Ages, and I sort of pick up with the Bronze.
It actually was a planned crossover here.
It was not a mistake.
But that issue has something inserted into it that Bob Greenberger suggested to me, and Bob Greenberger worked at DC. We were there together for a while. Next April, DC Comics moves. Officially, its editorial office is out to Los Angeles. Not a surprise for most people, but Bob has done a DC office memories, a New York office memories column, interviewed a ton of people, and there are a lot of anecdotes about working in that office in whichever configuration that person did. Some stories about the tours they used to conduct there, so that's part of that issue as well. I'm looking forward to that one.
That's number 80?
Number 80. I think it comes out in April.
John?
Oh, hi.
What you got with CBC coming up?
This Swamp Men's coming. The next one, the long-awaited Muck Monsters and their creators of the comics. It's just a lot of Bernie Wrightson in there. Alan Moore went to England and interviewed Alan Moore for that. Mike Klug, of course, Bissett and Beach. It's really turning out to be a really good issue, I think.
It's double size.
Double size, yeah. And number 7 will be Bernie Wrightson, and I had a chat with him today downstairs. He is here. It's an extraordinarily long interview that we did. I went up to California to visit him to do it. Then there's Mike Allred and Bob Birch doing for a nice surreal issue that's coming out. And lots of plans for 2015, and I'll reveal them as we go along.
Any yours? Modern Masters, Draw?
I'll start with Draw. The issue that just came out this week, I don't guess it'll hit stores until another 2 weeks probably, is cover feature on Farrell Dalrymple, who's one of the top indie artists right now. He's a writer-artist. His Richie's book is just coming out. I just got an advanced copy. It's pretty darn good. Fully painted stuff. And the backup feature for that one is Dave Bullock, who worked with Bruce Timm on Superman Adventures, and beyond that, he's also worked on Men in Black and the cartoon and Transformers cartoons, a bunch of different things. He-Man. He's going more into creator-owned comics right now, so just kind of talk about the contrast of working in animation and comics. And the next issue after that is cover feature is Chris Somney, the fantastic Daredevil artist who's doing great stuff with Mark Waid right now. And the back feature with that is probably going to be Butch Guys. We're still trying to know that down. We're just waiting for confirmation on Butch's schedule for that. Should hear back in a couple days. Modern Masters, the one I'm just finishing up the transcribing now, and then I've got to just lay it out. I've got all the artwork for it. It's Paulo Rivera, but also from that great Mark Waid run. He was the first artist on that run. He's doing a lot of covers. He does a lot of covers for Marvel right now. He started out working as a painter for Marvel with the Mythos series, but now he's doing mostly pen and ink stuff. And he's starting to work on a creator-owned thing, which is cool. After that is probably, depending on that schedule works out, it's most likely going to be G.H. Williams, the Batwoman artist, and working with, of course, with Promethea, and he's working on the Neil Gaiman Sandman Limited series right now. Fantastic artist. He does a lot of different things with his style. So he can go chiaroscuro, he can go paint. He does some really fantastic work, so I'm looking forward to that too. And beyond that, it's kind of up in the air. It could be Dave Johnson, it could be Kelly Hamner, it could be Darwin Cook. You never know.
Good. Other books you're working on?
What am I working on? Jim Aparo, yeah. Jim Aparo month's finally getting to the end here. Half the book is already written now, finally, and it took a lot of... Jim died, probably most of you know, Jim passed away right before we were going to start doing interviews with him for the book, and we had to give the family some time to adjust for that, and then we went through some... My original partner with the book had some things to develop, and I had to find some other one else to work with. It's just been a long series of various delays, but finally, it's getting close to the end here. So,
we got a couple others I'll mention, and then we'll look forward to a couple of questions before we wrap up here. A gentleman in the audience, Dewey Cassell. Stand up and about, Dewey. If you read his wonderful biography of Marie Severin, I enjoyed that, which we just sold out. Is working on a biography of Herb Trimpe. So we'll probably see that next year. I think that's fair to say. So,
and if you can't wait, then go back and read the radio interview. Just have to keep people in the mood.
There you go. In September, our biography of Don Heck will be coming out. It's going to be a full-color hardcover. That's going to the printer actually next week. So it will be out on time in September as planned. A lot of you are probably picking up our American Comic Book Chronicles series. This is the latest volume. It's on 1965 to 69. The 1970s volume is still on track to be out at the end of August. Then after that, we're doing 1940s volumes next year and a 1990s volume. Those three will go over the next 2 years. So,
is there going to be a 30s volume we talked about?
We are, yes.
30s, because they need to be something.
We are doing a pre-1940s volume.
It's not just,
Yeah, to kind of wrap that up, and possibly a slip case for the whole thing.
And I've been visiting, came down here and gratefully staying over at John Morrow's place in Raleigh. and we're spending quite a bit of time talking about possibilities in the future for some ambitious projects.
We are.
Hopefully next year we can announce.
Yeah, and we've got some others that I can go ahead and announce now. I can't give you a release date on. We did Marvel Comics in the 60s and Marvel Comics in the 70s. We're doing a third volume Marvel Comics in the 80s. We are doing a book called Monster Mash, which is an overview of the monster craze of the 1960s. Just trust me on this. This is going to be a fun book, a beautiful book. So details on that will be forthcoming in our house ads. We're doing more companion books, MLJ companion on the Mighty Crusaders heroes from Archie Comics, all in their history from the Golden Age to today. Pacific Comics companion, the history of that company and the ups and downs they went through, starting as really the first major independent company in the 80s. We're in the works on a Harvey Comics companion and also a bio of Robert E. Howard. So hopefully that gives you a little idea of what we got coming up over the next, I'd say, next year and a half to 2 years, something like that. Our new catalog should be printed and out in about the next 2 months, and you'll be seeing the digital versions online before that. So we are about out of time, but if we have any questions, I'm happy to take those. Sure.
Is Komodo ever going to be republished? And then the other, your excellent volumes on Warren Publishing and the Wally Wood volume, which are going for incredible prices on Amazon. Any plans to ever reissue those?
I'm going to give you as brief answers as I can. Komodo could still happen, but there's a lot of licensing and things that would be involved in getting that produced, and that costs a lot of money and maybe way out of our budget. So, the Against the Grain Wallace Wood book that's been out of print for a decade now. Stay tuned. You may see a new edition of that. Warren Companion, if we can ever get Jim Warren on the phone to pull the trigger on a new edition of that. I know Mr. Cook down there is just as anxious to do a new edition.
Love it, Jim. Love it. Answer the phone.
So, wish I could give you more definite things than that, but those are all three things that we still like to see. So, anybody else? Okay, well, if not, we appreciate you coming to our panel. We really appreciate you sticking with us.
And now to dinner.
Yes.
That's it for episode 31 of Dave Talks Comics. Dave Talks Comics can be found on the web at davetalkscomics.com, on Twitter at Dave Talks Comics. Email can be sent to Dave at davetalkscomics.com, or questions and comments can also be left in whichever forum you found this podcast posted. Next time on Dave Talks Comics, the Comics Journalism Roundtable panel.